Good evening. I'm Frank Congilose. I'm the managing partner here at C&A Financial Group. It's a pleasure to be with you. We're here at the middle of November. Happy Wisdom Wednesday to you. We've got Thanksgiving coming up shortly. So whether you're seeing it this week or, next week, if you're doing a replay and you're seeing us, hopefully you're all going to have a wonderful holiday. It's my pleasure today to have one of our vice presidents and one of our partners, John Suckey. John, always a pleasure to have you with us on the show. And we've got an interesting topic today, which is this time of year, everyone, if you're not retired, and you have company benefits, you are probably either in open enrollment or you're about to be in open enrollment for your benefits. And so, sometimes what occurs is we get the package, we look at it, we do nothing, and we assume that it'll automatically renew everything. But what we're here today to speak to you about is sometimes that's not a great idea just to let it renew the way it is. Sometimes you should probably really take a look and maybe make sure that you can update certain things, see how your circumstances have changed. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about the do's and the don'ts, what to pay attention to, and then we'll just kind of have a conversation about it so that we can help guide you through what you may be looking at during your open enrollment, so you know exactly what it is that you have, exactly what you should be signing up for, and then also how to coordinate everything with your personal planning and your personal benefits. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to benefit planning, there's either the protection component, and we always say on the protection side of this is you don't want to find out when it's too late that you didn't have the right coverage. Or it's the accumulation component, which is, you're planning for retirement, you're doing your 401k, you're doing all that. So, it's one of those of, you want to make sure you get it right. And so we're here tonight to give you a little coaching on what to pay attention to and, kind of go from there. So, by the way, John, we call him Chuck. So if I happen to say that by accident, there's nobody else in the room. I'm still speaking to John, but his nickname is also Chuck, just in case I mess up. So just keeping us all in the loop. So, if we were to look at this, Chuck, and, I said, hey, where do we start? When you get your benefit package, where do you normally start? What are you typically looking at? What do you do when you first get it?
So Frank, I think the first step, obviously, for everyone is once you get, usually it's an email, right? We go to a portal, is look at last year's selections, see what you had, see how it worked, and then obviously start looking forward, which is, a lot of times I think clients see like we do, like the menu changes. So,
and one of the big things with company plans is that healthcare over time has become very expensive. So it's common that companies amend plans, change carriers, raise deductibles, raise co-insurances. And so, if you just kind of like check the box, you may find out when you're going through a claim that, oh, I didn't realize I wasn't covered for that. I didn't realize that, the deductible changed. And at least by reviewing what you started with last year, what your options are this year, you'll start to see what the differences are.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually, Frank, recently I had a client that did that, just defaulted to what was checked, and the RX changed, but the carrier didn't. And what happened was they took their children to the doctor and they weren't on the RX plan. So they had to go back and amend it again. And they weren't totally aware because they didn't change Cigna. They just changed who dealt with the prescription side.
And it's important to know. So we're just certain. So again, look at your last year selection, look at what you have available. If, by the way, and it's common that, nowadays there's a lot of people that they have two people working in a house.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, or, when you have that, one person has benefits available through their employer, the other one has. And so my suggestion is always look at what plans are available between both spouses. Identify what are the net costs, so that you know where you stand. And then the other side of that is, if you've got medical conditions, you've got to make sure that you're choosing a plan that works with your condition. And when I say when it works with your condition, when we think in terms of healthcare, in my view, and again, this is designed to be kind of an overview. So again, read your benefit booklets for the details. Any questions of legal or any questions of, things like that, check with, your advisors. but we want to give you an overview. And so having said that, now that was our little disclosure, just in case.
Mhm.
Now having given you some disclosure there, there's really three types of plans. There's, we call them an HMO. They have lots of different names now that they call the HMOs, but fundamentally, here's the way that that works is if you've got to stay in the same network of providers, it sounds like a health maintenance organization.
Yeah.
That, you got to stay in a network in order to receive benefits. And so I just tell you, be aware of that. If you're not that type, that you don't want that restriction of I have to stay in the network, the other option that you have, if the plan offers it, is what's referred to as a preferred provider organization. And that's where you normally have in-network benefits and out-of-network benefits. So if you see a doctor who's not in your network, you can see him, but you're going to pay a higher deductible, you're going to pay co-insurance, and that's pretty common. And then you also have what's referred to as the high deductible health plan. And so for some, the high deductible health plan becomes a very favorable option. The catch with the high deductible health plan is it's common that you may have a $2,000 or $5,000 deductible before the first dollar of benefits is paid. So if from a cash flow standpoint or from having capital on hand, that doesn't work for you, okay? And you go, hey, if I had to pay $2,000 out of pocket first, that plan might not work. Now, on the other side of that is if you've got resources and you're pretty healthy, it's common many times that these higher deductible plans actually allow you to self-insure for what I call the small claims. And if you don't have a small claim, you're ahead of the plan because you save some money.
Absolutely.
So I just tell you, you've got all three available, but you got to kind of look and say, hey, based upon your family status, which plan based upon healthcare or health, physical, how everybody's doing is right. Who should cover the kids? Okay. If you've got two available, or if you're just one person and you always get the benefits through the one, you got to pick and choose what's best for you, best for your family and so forth, and understand all of the caps. And so, that's my insight on that. And never double up, by the way, because they don't pay twice. So it's one of those, and when I say don't double up is I've had over the years, I call it the very conservative, it's the belt and suspenders, where we go, let's take both benefits. And I sit there, I go, but you're paying on both. And they go, yeah, but we're going to be covered. And I said, just so that it doesn't work that way.
No, doesn't.
So
Absolutely not.
I think you've seen it too over the years.
Yes, definitely.
So, not normally the right way to go. And by the way, if you happen to be on the younger side and you're not having a lot of claims, premium drives that a lot of times. So if you're healthy, you're not going to a doctor other than physicals, things like that. Premium will drive it. The higher deductible plans, the HMOs, they come into play. What do you see?
And Frank, one thing to consider, make sure like the doctors you go to, sometimes they change what they take.
100%.
So you would just want to make aware, depending upon the plan you choose, that the doctor's still in the plan. Because I've seen clients deal with that, unfortunately.
And it's one of those of, sometimes, if you actually call your doctor's office and say, hey, we're up for renewal, I've got this plan available or that plan available. Are you in either one of those networks?
Yeah.
So, Chuck, that's a great insight. So that's on the healthcare side of everything. Next thing is, we call it, the world of initials, which is, FSAs, HSAs, and HRAs.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I look at those, FSAs are flexible spending accounts. Flexible spending accounts are typically, it's your money that you've set aside for healthcare expenses. And Chuck, you're a little bit younger than me. All right. He's a lot a bit younger than me. But, maybe take a minute and just talk about some of the things that, I know you utilize in an FSA, flexible spending account. What are the things for a young person that you see?
Well, make sure, I think obviously with the cost of everything, right, being relative to the times is if you have children, right, obviously if you're paying for childcare, or if there's situations where you have a child that needs additional care, whether it's physical therapy or additional testing, right, you can actually deduct money into these, in this case, the FSA, right, and actually get those benefits paid for right through that program.
So again, when you think of it, flexible spending account covers childcare, deductibles, co-insurances, things that are not necessarily covered in a plan.
Yep.
And it allows you to set aside money on a pre-tax basis to pay for those. So for the year 2025 coming up, Chuck, what's the number offhand that we're coming up for next
So
year?
3,300
So we've got
for
3,300.
2025. Yep.
And so the other side of that I just always encourage people is that in a flexible spending account, again, FSA, it is a use it or lose it benefit. So I see
Yeah.
people at year end and it's like, I didn't use this all yet. And so they're going out and they're getting their dental work done
Yeah.
because you can pay for dental work through your FSA. They're getting their eyeglasses. They're utilizing, the dollars that were set aside. And again, the thought process in this, if you really think about it, is if I set aside $1,000 in a flexible spending account, and let's say my tax rate was 30%, basically what occurred is that $1,000 I can use towards all the healthcare, and it saved me $300 in taxes. Had I not put the money in the FSA first, I'd be paying all those expenses with after-tax dollars, and so it cost me more money.
Yeah, sure.
So just as a little insight, there's another one that I'll mention, which are called HSAs, with their health savings accounts. And the health savings accounts work in conjunction with high deductible health plans. So it's common that somebody has a high deductible health plan, deductibles of 2,000 or more,
Correct.
and they do a health savings account. And the beauty of a health savings account is that, again, Chuck, I'll turn to you with the numbers on these because your eyes are better than mine. You've got a single limit if you're single, which is
4,300.
there you go. And you've got a family limit of
8,550.
per family. Now, it's interesting is a planning strategy. I use this one myself. Is that I do have a high deductible health plan. I maximize my flexible spending or my health savings account each year. And the health savings account, believe it or not, can be invested. So as an example, my health savings account is in the S&P 500.
Sure.
So it's a qualified account. So it's got to be designated health savings account. And that health savings account, in my particular case of what I have, it's in the S&P 500. So I have a little trick with this, which is I actually don't pay for deductibles and co-insurances with it. I fully fund my health savings account and I'm letting it grow till someday when I'm old. That's
Yes.
not anytime soon, by the way,
Yeah.
those of you who don't think that. So, but it's someday down the road. And then, perhaps later in life when the probabilities I'll have higher healthcare costs, because as I always say, we're like antique cars, look good, sound good and so forth, but can't get parts, hard to replace, and they're expensive. So as we're older and that occurs, I can use all that tax-free money later for those purposes.
Yeah.
So you can either use it today, kind of like the flexible spending account. But the nice thing about the health savings account is, and why we like them, but again, in conjunction with a high dollar deductible plan, it's not a use it or lose it. It's a bank it, invest it, and use it when you need it. And if you want to use it later rather than, sooner, it's a good way to grow some additional retirement assets. And again, the limit's 4,300 for a single, 8,550 for in family, just so that you're aware of it. And then
And Frank, just to interject, and if they're in your bracket age-wise, you get $1,000 catch-up over 55,
that's a good point.
right? So
So
you
over
utilize.
55, and I am over age
So
55.
one thing to consider, if you're trying to max retirement contributions, is another way to get $1,000
Correct.
into your retirement. package.
Absolutely. And I'll mention now there's, one other, which is it's not as common to me, which is there is what's referred to as a health reimbursement account. Some employers who over time have put in higher deductible health plans in order to help their teams and their staff to fund the differentials may be contributing towards a health reimbursement account for your benefit. This account is also a use it or lose it benefit most of the time, 9 times out of 10. And when that occurs, whatever is not utilized goes back to the employer It does not go back to the individual.
Gotcha.
So it's just important to note. So those are a few things, but if we were kind of looking at it, the heart of benefit planning normally starts with the health insurance plan, which we talked about, the three different types, HMO, PPO, high deductible health plan. Once we go to that, it's like, peeling an orange. That's the core. Next layer in there is whether you have that flexible spending account, health savings account, or health reimbursement account that may be associated with it. And then we get into what's referred to as ancillary benefits. So when we start getting into ancillary benefits, and Chuck, I'll let you go through the first one, which is, when we look at these, they're all different types. So Chuck, what are some of the ancillary that you're seeing?
So Frank, yeah, typically when you get to that second round of choices, you're looking at things like group life insurance, group disability, maybe long-term care if offered. So, and obviously this, part of the evaluation is like, hey, what do you own personally? And what can you get through your employer? But many options are usually offered. So if you're kind of talking about the group life, I guess would be the first one.
So, what I always tell people is, I'm of the opinion, if it's for free, it's for me. So, if they give you a base benefit across the board, it's common for companies to have 25, 50,000. Some companies will do a multiple times earnings. And then they give you the option of a buy-up, which is you can sometimes buy up those additional benefits for very minimal costs. So there's good and bad to that, by the way. So the good of that is it may be very economical initially for that buyout.
Yeah.
The downside of that, though, is if you leave where you are from an employment standpoint, because many people don't stay with the same company for 30, 40 years or whatever. But if you leave, oftentimes you're leaving that benefit behind. So my advice typically is, and by the way, those group life benefits and so forth are normally group term insurance. So
Yeah.
if you could get comparable cost in personal group term that you can keep with you,
Yeah.
you're probably better off doing that you can keep it for a longer period of time, lock the rates in for long periods of time, and it's yours. But by the way, one of the true benefits of group life at work is if you have medical conditions or health concerns, you've had some issues and so forth during open enrollment, it's very common that you can max out your benefits there without any evidence of insurability. So if God forbid you have a health condition, something came up during the year, right now when you're in open enrollment, it's like check the box, take as much as you can, because it's available to you and there is no medical underwriting 9 times out of 10. So that's the way that I see that.
And Frank, sometimes if there is underwriting, it's what they call simplified underwriting.
Right.
So it might be like 5 questions, and usually it's really major stuff. So you could probably get by that too. Yeah.
Great point. And then, one of the other things in it, it becomes, when you start looking at it as well as, and this is something I'm guilty of this, which is not checking all the time my beneficiaries.
Yeah.
Now, some like personally, I mean, I'm married a long time, so I'm 99.99% sure that I put Diane down. That's my wife, my better 3/4. I put her down, and I am sure I never changed it.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, is if you've had life changes that have gone on over time, some people are divorced, some people are remarried, some people got married, whatever the case might be, you need to address your beneficiary arrangements. And one of the other things on your beneficiary arrangements is if you did some fancy estate planning and your will says one thing, the life insurance at work should be consistent with whatever your will says. So we would just tell you to check those beneficiary arrangements and make sure that you're coordinating that with your personal planning. So,
And Frank, obviously, doing this a long time, you deal with a lot of people in a lot of different circumstances. Sometimes people get divorced, right? Sometimes and then they get remarried. So like checking that, I'm sure the new spouse wouldn't be excited to find out that the old spouse,
yeah, that doesn't go over well at
would
dinner.
not be a good
And
thing, right?
And with Thanksgiving next week, you don't want to end
No.
up in that'd be awkward.
So, yeah.
So it's all good. And you can tell we have fun working together doing this. So the next thing, and by the way, the next one that I'm going to bring up is probably one of the most important benefits that are often overlooked. and it's your group disability coverage at work. So group disability coverage is broken into really two parts. There's a short-term disability, and oftentimes there's a long-term disability. Our suggestion, simply stated, is to always maximize your disability benefits through work.
I
So
agree.
do you see it any
Yeah,
different?
no, absolutely, Frank. Yeah.
So there's a reason why I say that. The reason why you should always maximize your disability benefits at work are the following. Number one, they're usually very cost efficient. Okay. Oftentimes guaranteed issue. In addition to that, you know, you can get, so if you've got individual coverage, just so that you're aware of it, and then you get your benefits at work, you may end up with significant benefits. But if, let's say that you don't take the benefits at work and you then get your individual coverage, you're probably not going to be able to get the disability at work until open enrollment again next year, just so that you're aware of it. So I always say is you should maximize disability at work, but if you really wanted to max out your disability coverages, is, you know, make sure you have your individual coverage first if
Yeah,
you've had the opportunity to do that. Individual coverage usually is better because the definitions are better. You own it, you retain it, and so forth. But from a cost standpoint, normally group long-term disability, group short-term disability, just from a cost standpoint, is very cost effective, and it really provides, you know, a very good general benefit. Keep in mind that these disability programs oftentimes, if not every time, have offsets for perspective, state disability, social security, workers' comp. So all of those benefits like that oftentimes are offset, or they do offset that group disability benefit, which is why they're so cheap. But what I tell you is it's good to have that as an underlying benefit.
Agree. The other thing, Frank, is make sure sometimes you got to dig a little bit deeper, but make sure you understand the definition of disability. Right? Many times, unfortunately, doing this a long time, you see clients go out and they didn't realize, hey, it only paid 2 years based on their own occupation,
Right.
or it only paid a year or whatnot, 18 months. And then, not being aware of that, right? God forbid it happened. Right. That's the worst case. You don't want to deal with that on the back end without knowing.
Without question.
Yeah.
And so, I'll turn, Chuck, I'll let you maybe hit on some of the additional, supplemental benefits that are out there. Maybe just highlight a few of them.
Sure. Yeah. So, with regards to supplementals, so most people obviously get offered dental, right? You get vision. A lot of companies provide some kind of legal service now. You know, identity protection's a big one.
A hot
kind of
topic
like,
nowadays too. Be
like,
careful.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, literally, I think if you go on your phone, like one, in your email, maybe once a week, you get something from somebody you don't recognize that's trying to scam. Some sort
Once
of
a week,
identity.
that means you're only checking once a week.
Yeah, yeah.
Every time
true.
I open my phone, I got people I don't recognize.
By the way,
there.
very true. By the way, very true. Yeah, I'm very protective with my email. No, so those are kind of your basics, but some companies offer additional services, which, depending upon your situation, if you have pets, right? I do not at this moment, although my son is asking Santa for a dog. So we'll see how that goes, Santa. But
That's the gift that keeps on giving.
yes,
by the way.
my understanding is it's been a long time since I've raised an animal, but I also do know it's very expensive.
Oh, yeah.
And depending upon the type of dog, like pet insurance, those in that world know that if you get it through work, you probably can get a better bang for your buck than buying it individually. Education assistance is a big one now, Frank.
Yeah,
Right, continued education.
it's one of those of years ago, we never used to hear of it. Now it's becoming more and more standard. And, with, people when they graduate college nowadays, or they're taking additional courses, the cost of education is so high that sometimes that's a big deal.
Yeah, well, tremendous. So if whatever it may be, if there's an opportunity there where you're going back to school, absolutely.
Very
Couple other ones I've seen, Frank, right? So, since COVID, a lot more people are not commuting. So now the benefit package includes a commuter benefit that I saw recently.
Oh, I
Where
haven't seen that one
If
yet.
they're actually coming to the office, they'll incentivize you and pay for commuter costs, which is pretty interesting, right? And you think about how the world changed in
Yeah.
COVID, right? Discount programs. And then one that I saw recently that's special to my heart, because my situation with my son is, if you're in the world of adoption, there may be an adoption benefit that, as you're trying to grow your family, that's available to you.
It's a great insight. And so, and again, this is the time of the year that take a little time, look at your benefits. And by the way, I because we deal with our clients and people in our community all the time, I'll hear from people, Frank, it's just not my thing. I don't understand what I'm looking at. Is like you see the sign, C&A Financial Group. That's what we're here to help you with. So it's our cheap plug, little commercial on the in between, but
Absolutely.
we will help you to sort through what you're looking at. We're happy to do it. Your advisor, and if hopefully we're your advisors, but if we're not your advisors should be able to help you with that because I always say in wealth management, financial advising and so forth it should be holistic where you're having everything looked at and somebody can help you to see how it all fits together.
Yeah,
So
absolutely, Frank. And one of the biggest things that we coach our clients on is making sure it's coordinated,
that's it.
right? Absolutely.
It's got to fit.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go to, just really, the next section of that. So we take care of, say, healthcare and things like that and getting that out of the way. And then the only other benefit that this time of the year that people start to really address is, the 401k, or the retirement plan. And so, retirement plans, when they're provided by a company, whether it be profit sharing plan, whether it be a pension plan where you get a certain amount for being there, you don't really control that. Okay, that's company provided, company funded, managed by them. However, 401ks, which are the most common plan that we see
Mhm.
in the marketplace, this is typically the time of the year that people are identifying what they want to do with their 401k. And, years ago, it used to be, check the box and, just let it run. But nowadays, you really have to, think through what your options are. And the options that you have available to you are really one of two. You can either do what's referred to as traditional 401k, whereby you're taking a deduction today. And when the money comes out at retirement, it's subject to ordinary income tax. Or it's option two, which is you don't take the deduction today. And when the money comes out later, you pay no income tax. So I always, I was a kid, I grew up in Jackson. And when I did that years ago, there were farms. And so the example I always give with 401ks is, you have a choice. You can pay taxes on the seed or the harvest. So what occurs is that paying taxes on the seed is what I call the Roth, or it's a Roth 401k, which is I'm paying taxes on what I earned today, put it in the account, and then never pay tax again. Paying tax on the harvest is I take a tax deduction today, and whatever it grows to, when I take it out, I pay the taxes then. So the rule of thumb that I always tell people to think about is this. If you're young and just starting out in your career, typically your income looks like this over time, which is you're starting out. And when we all start out, most of us start out not earning a lot of money, not in a very high tax bracket. I really personally like Roth, which is pay the tax now at the lower rate. And then later in life, if God willing, you do well, you're successful, and you've done well for yourself, then when that money comes out, it's tax free. But if I'm later in life, or let's say that you're earning a lot today and you need the deduction, then take the traditional and take the deduction.
Yeah.
So Chuck, I don't know if you see it any differently, but again, early career, perhaps Roth.
Roth, yep.
The other side of that is if you're blessed with a significant amount of wealth over your lifetime, and you don't think you're really going to retire and have less income in retirement than you do today, then my automatic is, and I tell all my clients that are, have wealth, I love the idea of a Roth. It's like if you're not going to retire to a lower tax bracket, nobody knows what tax brackets will be in the future. But if you can kind of foresee that your income is going to be the same in retirement it is while you're working, then the Roth is very attractive because it's one of those of, might as well put it away, pay the tax and never pay tax again. And so I just, it's a thought that I use on that. Do you see it any different?
No, very true, Frank. And quite honestly, with a lot of folks that maybe started young and were great savers, they build these accounts up, and in their 50s, we see a lot,
Oh, yeah.
7 figures, or high 6 figures, or they may not spend it all. So even if they're finishing out their working career, Roth at that point's a good option for them, I think,
I agree.
right? Yeah.
Very good option. And so, the other thing a point to bring up is over the years, it's become common that 401k plans have a term is called safe harbor, where you're getting a company match. So the reason why I bring this up is that's an automatic that you get. So perspective for you would be this, is that whether you do traditional pre-tax or you do Roth, the company match always goes in pre-tax. So if I'm
Yeah.
doing Roth, which is what I do, even though I make my Roth contribution, when the company gives me a match, I'm really doing both. So I did the Roth and they did the traditional. And so you've got kind of tax diversification going on in your planning. So that's a good thing. So I would tell you, kind of keep that in mind that, these safe harbor plans or plans where the company makes a match, their money goes in pre-tax, their money grows tax deferred. And when it's distributed to you down the road, at that point, it's subject to ordinary income tax at whatever your tax situation is.
Yep.
So hopefully that's a help. And then Chuck, I know, every year, there's an indexing feature that goes on. Maybe you can share with people what the limits are going to look like for 2025 as they're coming into the new year. And, we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so for an individual under 50, it's 23.5, Frank, that they could put away.
It's
And
really
then,
expanded over time, hasn't it?
oh my God, yeah, I think when we first started, it was like 10. Yeah. I was 4 when I started, I think, but
I had
anyway.
air.
But the other important part is if you're over 50, right? Most people I think are aware, but the catch-up provision always goes up as well.
Yep.
So this year, that's an additional 7,500. And then if you're over 60, right, you can put in 11,250.
Yeah, there's a little window there. It's
Yeah.
kind of weird. It's from 60 to 63 years old. They've got this extra 11,250 that you're allowed to put in for those, those years. So
Yeah.
I think I get one more year of this one from what it looks like. So I'm gonna have to, say, hey, I'll do a little catch up here. And we'll, make that up. So I would just tell you, and again, here's our thought process for this, by the way, just so that our clients, I never want to mislead you into, having you come away with a certain perspective that may not be 100% accurate. General rule when it comes to 401ks, we love free money, and free money means you should always do at least to the match. Generally speaking, it's in your best interest. Above the match really then depends on your whole financial picture of what your world looks like. So as an example, if you've got some debt, you've got things going on, to put money in the 401k and not have liquidity is probably not a great idea. But if you have a lot of other things going on, then adding to the 401k is perfectly fine, and utilizing it as one of the core engines in your financial world, it's a wonderful vehicle to utilize. But it needs to be in conjunction with everything else. So it's like the safe harbor, the match, kind of a layup. Anything beyond that should fit into your overall financial picture with a plan around it that you see how it all fits together, especially as you're getting closer to retirement, so that you're aware of it. And then, with regard to investment decisions, what are you seeing nowadays? I'm not seeing people picking and choosing which
No.
funds anymore. That was the old days.
In the old days, a lot of what we're seeing is the target date funds, Frank, that basically you put in your age and they pick the allocation based upon how far you are away from retirement, which typically is
Yep.
the younger you are, the more stock or equity. And then as you get a little bit closer to the finish line, they go to a little bit more fixed, stable bond type allocations.
And for most people, I think that it's really the right way for them to go, because it's being professionally managed. And, I always say it's like driving down the Garden State Parkway. Those of you who are listening to us from New Jersey, you know what I mean, which is, I know the speed limit is 55 or 65, but, when they're coming down that lane at 85 miles an hour, because nobody does drive at 65, but when they're coming down that lane at 85 miles an hour and they got 50 miles to go, nobody notices. So that's like being 30 years old and you're going to your 65. However, when they're getting close to the exit, the exit's coming up, 1 mile or 2 mile, we start getting over to the right lane and we start backing off of that 85 or whatever we were doing. I'm just kidding, by the way, on the 85. But we're starting to get a little bit more relaxed and a little bit safer so that we can exit carefully. And so that's the idea with some of these target date funds. And what I do say to people all the time is if you have substantial assets, not only in the plan, but personally, you can do a target date that's a little longer out if you want to be a little bit more growth oriented.
Sure.
So as an example, let's say at my age, if I looked out and I go, hey, well, 10 years from today, I would be in a 2035 fund. And I go, yeah, but this isn't, this is a part of my plan, but not all of my plan. And so I want it to be a little bit more growth oriented. So maybe I do a 2040 fund.
Yeah.
And by adding those few extra years, it's a little bit more growth oriented. And by the way, it works the other way, which is if you're the type person that, if you get your statement and you look at it, you go, it's like, I'm down 15%. This is really upsetting. And that would really bother you. Then choosing a portfolio that is more conservative with a shorter time frame will take some of that volatility off the table. And so it's more important that you stay in the game and have a risk tolerance that fits for you than trying to just match a number.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely agree, Frank.
food
And
for
I
thought.
think that you bring up a great point. Is a lot of times people have worked for multiple employers, so they may have several different retirement accounts. So your point of coordination of how your investments are working is really key to this, like where you don't get too much overlap and kind of misguidance in what you're looking to accomplish.
It's interesting is, we spend a lot of time on the healthcare, the disability, the life, all very relevant, extremely important. When it really starts to get into like the retirement benefits, the 401k, probably one of the most important things you can discuss with your advisor as to what's the right investment for you, what's the right strategy for you, what's appropriate, how does it fit into your overall planning? And the reason being is because most of the time when you've got your advisor, they're taking care of stuff over here, some assets, and then they can see how these fit in and just kind of bring it together. So there's, a plan that, is succinct. It's, it's consistent. It should be coordinated.
And Frank, I find out if you find this too as well with clients is as they get closer to retirement, like they pay more attention to those statements. And we always said a lot of times when you're in that accumulation phase, you just ride it out. But then, like you said, if we use the stay with the park ride example, when it's time to get off, you kind of get a little itchy, like,
Oh yeah.
like what's going on with the economy, what's going on with the market. So it's really important to get the right counseling at that point in your life.
Absolutely, because it's interesting, and we speak on this. I write on this. When we're in accumulation, when the market went down, it really doesn't matter. And the reason why it doesn't matter is because I'm not taking money out. However, when I'm about to retire, or now I am retired, and the market going down matters. So an example would be is if I'm distributing, let's say, income from my retirement plan at 4% or 5% a year in what is referred to as a safe withdrawal rate. If there's a market turn down of say 10 or 15% that affects me in that particular year, I took 4 or 5
Yep.
and I'm down, say 10, that's a 15% distribution. And let's say if that occurred in the first year of retirement, or that happened, 2 or 3 times in a row, that retirement account can get cut in half really fast. And it's one of those of, nobody wants to sit there and say, let me see if I got this straight. I retired at 67. Here I am at 70, 71, and my retirement account is not anywhere near what I need to be considering going back and doing something.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to be doing that. So it's important that the risk tolerance is right, that you have, what we call other forms of liquidity, especially in a down market. And if you're getting ready to retire in the near future, I always say, understanding how to land the plane, as I would call it, or come down the mountain is critical.
Yeah, huge.
Accumulation planning is easy. Distribution planning is an art. And so I say work with an advisor, C&A advisor, and we can help you with that, just as a little FYI. And then one of the other things, and it's a big deal nowadays, are beneficiary arrangements.
Yep, another one.
The law changed a few years back. And what occurred is that on a retirement account, one is you should always have a named beneficiary. If you're married, it must go to your spouse unless they sign off. But the benefit of it going to your spouse is it doesn't have a 10-year force out.
Yeah.
Once it goes to your children, your grandchildren, or anyone else like that, or family, that money must be emptied out of the account within 10 years from the time they inherited. So again, pay special attention to your beneficiaries. Make sure that you have secondary beneficiaries. For some of you that may be watching this, and some are widows, things that
Yeah.
happen, update those beneficiary arrangements on all of the retirement accounts. It's critical. So anything else that you could think of on that?
No, I think with regards to that, other than, like you said, our approach around holistic planning and taking a look at what's best suited, it's good advice.
And so the only other thing I'm going to add is this is I recognize, and I think all of you recognize, that this time of the year, we've got open enrollment, we got Thanksgiving, we're going to have the holidays coming up in December, and we all get busy. So it's important to get your benefit selections reviewed, updated, and submitted on time.
Yeah.
And keep a copy of what you send in, because sometimes if we submit it, or we thought we submitted it and we didn't hit save,
Yes.
but we submit, it may not be what we thought. And so by keeping a copy, we can review it afterwards to make sure we did it correctly. Or if it didn't take, I've got a copy here that I can say, look, this is what I submitted, which would help you. So I just tell you, be careful as you're doing that. So
No,
anything
good
else
point.
on your side?
Yeah, no, Frank, I think one other thing to take note of is during the course of the year, you know, with regards to the workforce, people change jobs. Right, so there's things in your benefit package known as a qualifying life event. So like a change of a job, right? By the way,
Good point.
unfortunately, a loss of a job.
Yep.
Right, a sickness, unfortunately, if it's a premature death.
Yep.
Right, there may be an opportunity where you can change benefits or make some different decisions with regards to what you chose before. So that's just something to take note of. Is God forbid that happened to you, just be aware that, you know, you may have access to another spouse's plan at that point,
Very good.
or some other programs.
Yeah, and keep in mind is if you change employment during the course of the year, make sure you pay attention to COBRA rules, COBRA regulations, what's available to you. Also, if you have kids going off to college, things of that nature, make sure that you're checking how your benefits are covering them as well, and watch the ages on your kids, as far as to make sure that they're still covered under the plan. Outside of that, I think that we're all set for our,
Yeah.
recommendations during the enrollment period that we have going on. And I wish all of you a happy, healthy, and blessed Thanksgiving and great holiday season. We'll see you coming up in probably a few weeks. I believe we have another program on year-end tax planning.
Nice.
So we'll give you some more insights. So Chuck, it's always a pleasure being together with you doing this.
Well, wish Frank, same here. Thank you for inviting me.
Very good. Everybody have a great week. Have a nice night.
Happy Thanksgiving.